The jack of all trades is a master of none, which is the reason why I niched down to sales systems rather than just a generic automation agency. And that was the main reason I was able to scale to 139K per month. So in this video, I'll break down all the reasons why I did that and why it was the smartest move I've made. So that way you can take whatever makes sense to you and figure out whether you're building something scalable or you're just wasting your time. So let's get into it.
So before I explain why I niched down to sales systems instead of just automation agency, let's go back down memory lane. That way you guys have more context about my journey so you guys can relate to that and take what makes sense. That way you guys can apply it to your specific situation so you can avoid all of the mistakes that I've made along the way. That way you guys can achieve success way faster, okay? So I first got started as an Upwork freelancer. This is basically like the timeline, my own timeline. So I was making $48 an hour, basically just selling automation on Upwork. And then I got banned with over $2,000 frozen, okay? So when I was freelancing on Upwork, I noticed one thing. I noticed that 99% of my gigs were lead gen systems, okay? There was a little bit of automation, but it was basically just like $200, $100 gigs, okay? But the main pie was actually lead gen systems, okay? Now, the problem with this is that not every month you're going to be consistently making the same income because people are not going to be constantly posting jobs, or like business owners or like decision makers are not going to be constantly posting jobs every month for lead gen systems or like sales systems. Okay. So that was very, very unpredictable. So you have like 1 month where you're making like 1K and then the next month you're making $0 just because people are not just posting jobs, right? Which is essentially like a 9 to 5 dressed up as freelancing. Okay. Which is something really scary. Okay. The main problem is that people pick you. And I didn't like the fact that people can just pick me, right? Like I will pick people off the internet and decide whether I want to work with them or not, okay? And I'm assuming you guys are like this. You guys are like me, which is the beauty about sales systems is that you literally pick a random business off the internet and you close them and you get them to pay you, right? Which is, I think this is the coolest thing ever, okay? Instead of waiting for another business owner to just pick you, right? So after that, when I noticed that 99% of my gigs were lead gen systems plus the Upwork ban, well, I decided to go all in and I created what it's called now the sales system agency model. Okay. So I was the creator of it, which is pretty interesting because nobody talks about sales systems, right? Nobody talks about sales automation. Okay. Which makes me the go-to expert in this field. Okay. Because sales systems are a little bit different than automation, just generic automation. There's multiple pricing strategies, positioning, etc. Way different than automation. Okay. So that makes me the go-to experts because I went to the market and I sold sales systems to businesses making millions of dollars a year. Some of them even making millions of dollars a month. Okay. So I know how it works. So when I created the sales system agency model and I essentially just went into the market to get customers for my own business, I quickly realized that it was the right decision. Okay. And I'm going to explain to you why. So it's like I went into a room, right? And when I got into that room, inside that room, I tried multiple foods. Okay. And those multiple foods are basically just me trying to sell multiple automation. And when I tasted that food, which is sales systems, I was like, okay, I can double down on that, right? It's kind of like the same thing, same analogy. And it turned out to be the right decision. So this was my thought process and the reason why I niched down to a sales system agency instead of just generic automation agency, okay? And there are multiple issues with just going for it and just a random automation agency, and I'm going to explain to you why, okay? So the first thing we're going to be talking about is 1, you become the jack of all trades, master of none. So the problem with that is when you try to build and sell automation to everyone, right? You end up being nobody special, okay? There's no unique value that makes you stand out in the sea of all the automation providers out there. But when you focus on just sales automation or sales systems, well, you become the go-to expert, okay? You become the go-to expert that everybody turns to. And also, clients know exactly why they need you. So once you become the go-to expert, well, now guess what? You can build a personal brand, okay? Once you build a personal brand, well, you become the person who is expert in that exact field, right? Which makes client acquisition easier. Let me give you an example of one of the biggest, like trillion-dollar companies, Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola, when they first got started, they focused on one drink, one product. They didn't try to sell multiple drinks at once. They just focused on one product and they perfected the recipe, okay? And once they perfected the recipe, well, now they are a trillion-dollar company. Think about it. You probably had the Coca-Cola yesterday or last week. I don't know. But Coca-Cola, right? They focus on one thing. So what makes you think that you should not be focused on one thing, perfecting it and being the go-to expert in that field? That way you can differentiate yourself from all the automation providers, right? So now clients can just understand what you're providing and they know exactly why they should work with you and why they're coming to you, right? And now that way you can build a personal brand that you can leverage later on, okay? So let's take the example of Coca-Cola. Now, if you try to sell automation to everyone, well, it's kind of like Coca-Cola trying to sell multiple drinks at once. Well, they will never become special that way because they're known as Coca-Cola, the one drink, the one soda that everybody likes. So what I would recommend you guys do is focus on sales systems because that's how you become the Coca-Cola of the automation field, okay? Because now people know that you are focused on sales automation because, I mean, guess what? You're solving the biggest problem, which is client acquisition. So now you become a beast. You become unstoppable because you've differentiated yourself from everybody in the market, okay? So the cool part about a sales team agency and why it's better than just a generic automation agency is that there's no let me test a couple integrations or test APIs and get back to you, right? So for example, let's say you hop on a call with someone who's interested in your automation services. Typically, you're going to have to look at their business, right? And see if you can actually build that system that's going to automate whatever they have in that business. So you can't really be sure if you can, one, build that system, and two, if it's doable, and three, if it's not going to break or not, okay? So there's no let me test a couple integrations on the call and get back to you. Let me try to connect these APIs, look through the documentation. A client just hops on a call and says, I need clients. And you say, hey, okay, here's clients. That's literally it. So it really helps with the conversion because there's no like multiple calls. There's just basically like a discovery call, right? And then after that, they pay and there's the onboarding or the kickoff call. That's literally it, okay? Unless you're working with like enterprise level companies where there's like a discovery call and there's like a closing call when the deal is like plus $10,000, okay? But even there's just like a discovery call and there's essentially just kickoff call where you start the project. So there's no friction. There's no frying in your brain for 14 hours a day, staring at a computer, trying to fix this crazy thing. And as you guys know me, right? I'm all about minimizing friction and making things simple for me, okay? And I'm assuming you guys are like me because you just want to do things that are simple and are profitable. That's literally it because you want your work or your business, your sales automation business to feel like play. That way you can do it for a long time and you can do it long term, right? Your work should feel like play. Because, I mean, think about it. Why would you do this? Like the whole point of you starting a business is because you want to achieve freedom. So now you're trapping yourself into like these crazy workflows, these crazy automations that you need to be spending weeks building. And sometimes they would break, right? And you're testing if it's going to work and you're just staring at the computer for like 20 hours trying to come up with this solution, frying your brain. Like that's not play. The main reason you started a business because you want to have freedom, right? That's literally the entire point of business, right? So why would you do that? So when you try to sell automation to everyone or like just generic automation, any kind of automation, there's also something called scope creep. What does that mean? Okay, let me explain it in very, very simple terms. It just means that the project gets bigger and bigger, more than it was originally planned, and clients just keep asking for extra stuff. And now it's much more work than you initially thought. So now when you have scope creep, well, every project is different, which means, well, I'm going to make this red, no repeatable system. which means no templates. So every client, it's like reinventing the wheel from zero. Well, guess what now? Well, you can't scale, okay? Now, I know you might be thinking, Saad, can you just explain scale? Well, scale is basically just applying volume to what's already working. And scale only happens when you can deliver the same results over and over without more effort. 2, it's when your business runs on systems, not your time. This is why you can't scale with an automation agency. So the problem here, let's make this problem, is that you can't really reuse your work. So you can't scale. You can't train a team. So scale is impossible. Which takes me to the third issue, which is very hard to productize and systemize. That's another big issue, is that it's very hard to productize and systemize your business. Because when you're custom building everything from scratch, you can't really template, you can't really productize your service, right? So you're going to be stuck doing done for you work forever. Because nothing, I'm going to make this super big, nothing is repeatable. And what is scale, like we talked about? It's applying volume to something that's already working. It has to be repeatable, consistent, and predictable, right? This is how you scale. And that's a problem with just generic automation agencies. You can't template, you can't productize, because every single time there's a different project. Like different clients will want different things. But the beauty about sales systems is that clients just want more customers. And that's literally it. Okay, so you focus on one thing, you become the master of it, and that's it. You can scale. And that's how I've scaled to 139K a month. One big problem, okay, which is, and I think this is like the biggest one, is that it is very hard, extremely hard actually, to sell just automation through outreach unless it solves a big problem. And let me explain. Now, think about it logically. You can't just assume that a company needs automation. There's no signal. There's no signal that signals that a company needs automation, right? So you can't really assume that. But you can be pretty sure that a company needs customers, right? And there's multiple signals to look for. For example, let me give you just a couple examples. If a company is hiring for sales, well, that means they are hiring more salespeople, and those salespeople are going to be taking calls and conversations with decision makers. So that means they need customers. That means, well, it's our ideal customers because, well, what do? We build systems that connect companies with their ideal clients. Boom. If a company just got recently funded, well, that means they have the money. That means they're looking to expand, to grow. And how do you grow revenue? Well, by getting more customers. Exactly. You nailed it, right? Are you tracking? So you can't really assume if a company just needs automation, but you can be 100% sure that they need clients, okay? This is the thought process. You need to really ingrain this in your mind, okay? Now, there's very tiny signals that you can look for if you still want to sell automation, right? So let's say, for example, if a company is hiring for an onboarding specialist, you can probably say that, okay, if they are hiring for an onboarding specialist, that means they need an onboarding system. But the problem with that is that the data is limited. Like, how many companies, right, are you going to find that are hiring for an onboarding specialist? Maybe 300, maybe less. So you can't really scale again, right? And also, it's pretty tough to stand out. So, like I said, you can be pretty sure that a company needs clients. And I think it was Warren Buffett when he said this. Actually, it was not Warren Buffett. It was his partner, Charlie Munger. He said, I'd rather be vaguely right than specifically wrong, right? Another issue we have is there's no clear ROI, no clear return on investment. What does that mean? It means that, to be fair, like 99% of automations don't really impact revenue or impact any business bottom line unless it's sales systems. So clients can find it pretty difficult to see the ROI and they hesitate to pay. So they struggle to actually see the value or justify the investment. And let me explain this, okay? So there's something called the value ladder, okay? And then let me just give you like an example, like a visual example. So this is a pyramid, okay? All right? And let's name this the value ladder, okay? Now, here, what do we have? This is called awareness. This is called engagement and nurturing. This is called conversion, and this is called retention. So this pyramid is going to help you guys a ton when you want to sell automation, okay? So whenever you want to sell automation, just reference this value ladder, okay? So what is awareness? Awareness is essentially just traffic, okay? Not necessarily clients, which is the reason why PPC ads or like marketing agencies just suck at scaling because they don't necessarily provide clients, which is up in the value ladder, but they provide awareness, right? That's all they do, just awareness, not necessarily clients, okay? Now, a sales agency comes here. It's conversion and engagement and nurturing, okay? So we're not just driving traffic, we're literally putting a decision maker of X company, okay? So X company, and then Y company decision maker, and we just connecting the two. So that's like in conversion and also helps with retention, okay? So businesses need us. They literally need you. We're not just providing just awareness. We're actually providing awareness and engagement and nurturing and also conversion, right? Because now they only have to do is just take on the calls, right? And take on these conversations and close them. So this is what makes the sales agency model scalable, predictable, and reliable, and something that you can actually do long term. That way you can achieve what you want out of life and actually live the life that you want and just be happy, right? So recap, the problem with just generic automation agency is that you become the jack of all trades, just like we talked about. So what I would recommend you do is just focus on sales systems. That way you become the expert. And since now we're becoming the expert, well, now we can essentially just build your brand. And that way you differentiate yourself from all the automation providers, just like I did. And then you also limit the scope creep, right? Because with automation, just selling random automation, well, now there's scope creep. Well, now you're putting so much time and energy in things that you cannot template, just basically one-off projects. So there's no scale, okay? So it's very hard to productize because nothing is repeatable, okay? With a sales agency, you can basically use the same system with 90 plus industry, which is pretty cool, right? That way you can systemize and you can essentially just record SOPs for your team. And that way you have more founder time, right? Founder time is essentially just going for the high ROI task and just letting people handle all of the other things like admin work. So now you can just hire people and now you can scale, right? See how easy it is? See how simple it is, right? It's just minimize the friction and just simple. And it's also easy to sell sales systems through outreach and outbound because you're not just assuming that a company needs automation. You're solving a very, very painful problem, which is client acquisition, okay? And there's also a clear ROI because think about it. clients means more revenue for that business. So they can't say no, okay? They'll always say, yes, please get us clients, okay? And then at the end, look at the value ladder and you will notice that sales systems just basically cut through the noise and they are so up in the value ladder that it focuses on engagement, nurturing, conversion, and also retention. Because when you connect companies with their ideal clients, well, it's their ideal clients. Well, now they can retain them. And when they retain them, well, now we can also retain them. And then now they become a retainer forever with you. So now that you understand this, right, the only thing you have to do is get out there, take action. I believe in you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.